JC Sherwood, Phil Mullinax with you. Second hour brought to you by the purchasing team at RE/MAX at the Lake for all your commercial real estate needs. Give Adam and those guys a call. Also wanted to let you know about Meredith Taylor. The Meredith Taylor guest line is where we're going to join Michael Flint here in a second. But go follow her on Twitter at MER Taylor. It's Mayor Taylor, not Mer Taylor. And I don't know. She's got some gear up, some golf gear. Looks good.
Yeah, I saw that. She got some pretty clean looking sweatshirts up here.
Yeah, go to McKellarEnterprise.org. I'm going to buy some, man. It looks solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, encourage you to go check that out if you can. All right, so time to talk football with our main man, Michael Flint. Michael, here you've been watching some film, buddy.
Right. And I had to go back and watch the game a little bit. Always on outside. Right.
Hold up, Michael. Hold on.
Just a second, Michael.
Let's see if we can fix your audio a little bit. Sorry about that, guys.
Let's see. Yeah, try again. Let's see if we can't hear him a little better now.
Yeah, see if we can hear you a little better now.
There. Oh.
He's fixed.
You hear me a little better?
Yeah, there you go, bud. There you go.
Yeah, no, it was had to go back and rewatch it a little bit. It's a little different watching it live, in person or on TV because you find yourself following the ball and you really don't see what goes on with the other 10 guys or 9 guys outside the quarterback and whoever's got the ball. You don't see what happens on the perimeter and how they got to what they're doing or missing blocks or throwing one heck of a block for the ball carrier. So had to go back and watch a little more to see what really happened with, was the offensive line. Did they play that bad or was it more of the guys on the perimeter not doing what they were supposed to be doing, to help. So, yeah, I had to go back and watch a little bit.
So what'd you find out? Because, I didn't go back and break down the whole game, but I did see some instances in rewatching it where a better block or a block at all, because sometimes they whiffed out on the perimeter, could have turned into several explosive plays. And I think had those blocks been made, we may even be talking a little bit different about the offense today.
No, you're 100% right. There were a lot of times where the receivers or a tight end outside really just, did ball, and then they'll tell you the same thing. Did a terrible job blocking. They did a bad job. They missed blocks. They whiffed on blocks. They were in bad positions. Technique fundamentals were not good. There was a lot of just kind of, they would engage with the defensive back, and the defensive back did what they want, sling them one way or another, depending on which way the ball carrier was coming. So the level of physicality with those guys on the outside has to improve dramatically to have success this week. The offensive line did have their struggles at times. I think a lot of it, go back and watch. I think that horizontal or wide zone blocking scheme is tough. I think it takes it really a special skill set because when you go back and watch, it looked, especially early in the game, it looked like our guys were on their heels, and they weren't. It's not as much of an attacking mentality as different styles of different schemes like the pin and pull. It's more of that horizontal. Out leverage your man and stretch the run game and stretch the field. So it looked like a lot of times guys were on their heels. They got pushed backwards. So especially in pass protection with play action, guys they were caught off guard a lot. They were playing on their heels, and I think in the second half it changed a bit. But the guys did play well. I think especially in the interior. The offensive line first half to second half did a lot better job playing faster and getting to the second level. There was a lot of times where that linebacker made the play. And instead of a 2 or 3, for a 2-3 yard gain where, the guard or whoever gets to the second level and gets a hat on a hat with the linebacker, that, it's a different story I think we're talking about. But I think the level of play was elevated in the second half. I think the line did a better job of opening up holes, but there was still some challenges. Guys just got beat. They just got beat one-on-one situations that's not good, and it doesn't make me feel very comfortable. But I think there was a lot of teaching moments from that film that I think those coaches are going to go back, and those guys are really going to work on the technique piece of it. not being so much on their heels and really firing their hands and not letting those defenders get, when you say the hand battles and not letting them get their hands inside. But the perimeter was one of the big areas that really surprised me of how bad that blocking was. And fundamentally, it wasn't clean. And there's a lot of technique things that those guys, and a lot of it comes down to toughness. It's physicality and toughness, and not letting that guy beat you. So that's going to be a big piece of it this week to see how we improve, not just with the offensive line and kind of what scheme we try to utilize more, but also those guys on the perimeter.
Yeah, you played receiver, for Holtz and Spurrier. Obviously, I was talking to people. Coach Spurrier wouldn't let you play as a receiver if you wouldn't block. I mean, because that was a lot of his offense. They run those little tunnel screens and bubble screens and stuff like that. They emphasized it at practice this week. If it were just the O line, that would be I would be much more concerned, right? But blocking on the perimeter, I mean, a lot of these guys are big guys. They're tough guys. They can take a hit and hold on to the ball, that kind of thing. How hard is that to correct with a week's worth of emphasis in practice?
It's not that bad. I think a lot of what I saw just simply came down to effort and technique. Knowing which shoulder to attack, knowing where the ball carrier is going to be, knowing who to get. I think a lot of it just comes down to effort and toughness, really. Because a lot of the times the guys were in good position for the most part. It was just the physicality wasn't there as much. And I'll tell you, Georgia State going back, those guys are coached really well. They did a good job with the different style of blitzes that they came with. But from the perimeter standpoint, I think a lot of what I saw, it can be fixed. And it really comes down to effort, toughness, and play and physical and being better than that guy in front of you. And I think we got some guys that can do that.
Did you almost say effort, toughness, and discipline?
No, yeah.
that was most yes thing. I was like, uh-oh. Effort, toughness, and discipline. No, I agree. And look, you got some guys out there that are veterans. I mean, man, one of those plays, Jaheim Bell and Josh Vann, both you saw two guys. They both whiffed.
Yep.
On the blocks. I mean, those guys have been around a while. They can block. I mean, which makes me feel better because it's correctable. It's not like they're out there with a bunch of freshmen at receiver that they just want to catch the ball and don't really give a crap about blocking. I mean, those guys have been asked to do it before. And that made me feel a lot better. So you mentioned the outside zone. Obviously that's a staple of the Los Angeles Rams, which we've heard about all summer. Phil said after watching the Rams last night, he did not feel
it did not inspire a lot of confidence in me.
It's the NFL, and I think this may be the Bills' year. To be honest with you, I think the Bills.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
But that's kind of that McVay out. A lot of people run outside zone, and I think Carolina's got players to do it in the backfield. So what would you suggest in terms of because so there was a couple plays where I noticed you've got a guard pulling all the way, almost 5 yards, 4, 5 yards to try to block an end, pulling all the way around. Everybody pulls, right? It just seemed like a pretty long way to go. The Rams haven't, and I don't know the players exactly, but hypothetically, their guy that's pulling, it runs 4.7, and he was an All-American at Iowa or Michigan, right?
Yeah.
This is the University of South Carolina. I think these guys are good. I mean, I think guys like Trey Jones can move around and stuff, but I think that's a big ask with guys at this level.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it really comes down to the fronts of the D line and linebackers, that front seven, where they're lined up, kind of the calls that the center makes. It's not really out of the ordinary seeing some of those guys pull. I think a lot of it was just the look of that Georgia State defender got upfield more so than squeezing downhill. And so it looked more, it was, I think it was Rashawn Lee was out there. It looked like he was out there, but I think he was a little shocked that the Georgia State defender was that far upfield rather than squeezing down like he normally would. It is a long way. I think a lot of it depends on kind of what play is called. But I did like the fact that we saw some guys pulling, we saw some guys getting downhill at certain times. I think, there's certain situations that I think that wide zone is good, where you can set up a lot of play action passing, because it's a lot of the same look, to where, you run more of that attacking style. It's a little bit easier to tell kind of from a pass protection standpoint, from a defensive front seven, is it a pass or is it a run?
Yeah.
From a lot of the sets. But I think there's also times where you need to attack and get downhill, especially in the red zone, where where that field is shrunk, and there's a lot more guys in the box, and attack and put those defensive linemen on their heels. So I do think there's a time and a place for that. So I think with that wide zone, it takes a special player. I mean, it's kind of, you look at the kind of people we have at that nickel spot, or what we used to call the spur spot. Historically, the guys that have played that in South Carolina's defense, whether it be Ellis Johnson or now, a lot of those guys, just about every single one of those guys has played in the NFL and had a good career. And so it takes a special kind of athlete to be able to play in the box with the physicality that's required as kind of an outside linebacker, and then be able to get out in space and cover. And I think from that technique, it takes a special kind of athlete to really be, from a footwork and athleticism standpoint, because you're expected to move a lot. You're moving in bigger spaces. And so the athleticism has to be there. You got to be able to cut guys off. You got to be able to move and out leverage people. So I do think that takes a special kind of talent. I think conceptually, it's a great scheme, but you got to have the right type of personnel to do it. And so, do we have that? I don't know. Time will tell, how we do these next couple of games versus the teams we're playing. So, but I would like to see, I'd like to see a little more diversity, just to help our guys with that scheme. Because I think you can help your guys by play calling. And kind of an example, one example I look at is I think it was in the second quarter, where Rattler got sacked on a corner blitz on the short side of the field. The Georgia State corner was on the Georgia State sideline, to where you're watching film and you can see tendencies that play callers have. And interested to see how often Georgia State, at the short side of the field like that versus certain formations, a single receiver versus a twin four receiver set into the boundary. And Rattler was back there, and I think Marshawn Lloyd missed it. Rattler, you could tell, didn't see it, but you could see the corner start to squeeze. So the receiver should have been calling that out, and that goes to the communication piece. But as a play caller, you see tendencies, and it's like, we're susceptible to corner blitz. Let me roll Spencer out, or let me run a sort of a play action, or let me get an extra guy over there to help. And so I think a lot of that comes down to the play callers actually helping those guys and putting those guys in position to be successful. And I think Clayton White really does a phenomenal job of that on defense.
Yeah, I think so too. Phil, you got something?
No, I was just, from what you were saying, Michael, what do you think about the linebacker play this year? I mean, I personally think it's improved. I think everybody sees a bit of improvement over what we had last year, especially with speed. I mean, we all love Damani Staley, but he was slow.
Yeah, I think you look at it. I think you look at it. You see size.
Oh, we lost him.
There we go.
Oh, hang on.
We can't hear you.
Is he muted?
I'm trying to fix it.
All right, hold on. We're gonna fix it.
No, he's muted on his end somehow.
You're somehow muted on your end, Michael. That's all right, man. This is a great segment, man. I'm like,
you got me back.
There you go, man. You're back. Way to go on it. Okay.
I don't know, man. Technology these days.
I'll tell you.
Too many moving pieces.
We were talking about linebackers and
yeah. So I think you see guys that have matured. You see guys that are healthy. Experience is a huge factor in the SEC, and I think a guy like Mo Kaba coming back from injury. I mean, you look at Marshawn Lloyd, what he's done this year versus last year. You look at Mo Kaba coming in off an injury. You look at Debo Williams coming in. He's a workhorse. He works his tail off. But the speed of the game is different, and it takes a little while to adjust to that. And I think you've seen those guys adjust, and they've provided depth. And I tell you, seeing Mo Kaba, he reminds me a lot of Ernest Jones. He's physical.
Yeah.
He plays downhill. And, seeing him, it really reminded me of a Ernest Jones, who's starting linebacker for the Rams. Played very physical, always played hard. And I think you playing downhill, and you got a guy like Debo Williams, who's the same way. May not be as big, maybe a little undersized, but he plays fast and physical. And that's exactly what you want to see with those linebackers.
I thought Brad Johnson was improved too, and like with Brad, you mentioned experience, and this is the first time I think he's played the same spot back to back.
Yeah,
so been at Carolina. He's been at Carolina forever. I mean, I think he came in when you were graduating, so like 20 years ago. But no, yeah, but Brad looks more comfortable this year. Now he's always going to be a guy that's better suited to pass rush. I mean, he's a pass rushing linebacker, but I thought just in terms of his assignments and stuff, he looked like he was more comfortable.
Yeah, I tell you, you're 100% right. I think he's finally gotten his body to where he feels good and he can maximize his ability based on size and strength. I think when he was playing defensive end, he had gotten too big, too strong, and he got stiff. He couldn't bend in his hips very well, and he just looked real stiff. And I think now you've seen him kind of transform his body to more naturally where he's not too big and too stiff and not being able to bend and not being flexible. And I think the strength staff has done one heck of a job with him and kind of transforming, trying to get too big to be a defensive end, to be able to maintain, then getting to, that size to play linebacker. And he played fast. I mean, he was all over the field, which is good to see. You see guys that think too much about what they're supposed to be doing, and you just play slow. It's not read and react. It's read, think, then react. And that's what you don't want. You want to see guys that read and react to what they're doing. So it's been I think those guys, it's clicked, and it was really fun to watch that defense, last Saturday, because they flew around the field. They knew what they were doing. And I think this coming week, it's really interesting to see what we do with Cam Smith. If we continue to leave Cam Smith inside, or if we or if we choose to, for him to play outside. Georgia State did try to pick on Dial a little bit. He was in position a lot of the times, but it didn't really feel right. He was beat a couple times, made up, but Georgia State was not really good at throwing the football, and accuracy it lacked. So it is going to be interesting to see what happens there with Cam Smith if we choose to leave him inside, or if we choose to put him back at the corner, and maybe a guy like David Spalding comes in and plays some of that nickel spot.
What do you think? Obviously, there's one key injury last week. That was R.J. Roderick, 6 plays into the game. What did you think about Nick Emanware from right there at Irmo, a true freshman?
I thought he looked good. I tell you, that play, that fourth down play was impressive. I had to do a double take to see who that was, because for a freshman to come in the first, on his first or second play as a college athlete, to come in and really just stonewall. I mean, he looked like a veteran out there at times. Now I think we all need to be careful, because we haven't really seen what he can do in coverage from a coverage standpoint. And Arkansas is really going to test that this week, and making sure, seeing how how he does in coverage. So I know R.J. Roderick was really good in the run game at times, but historically over the past, he hasn't been great in coverage. And I think that's one thing we're going to have to kind of temper the expectations to make sure that, there's a lot that goes on with coverage responsibilities. And Georgia State really didn't press that very much with what they did, being that run first team to set up the pass. But I was impressive. He played fast, he played physical, and it's for a freshman coming in like that, not highly touted. It was really cool to see, because he was kind of a camp evaluation that it was like, holy cow, this guy's a physical specimen. He's an athlete that can run. And from a size standpoint, you don't see that very often. But being able to come in and pick it up mentally and be able to understand the playbook has been very impressive. And I think, being able to see what he can do in coverage this week, I think is gonna go a long way. Kind of how the rest of the season goes with him on defense. But I think it's there. The physicality's there. That was it. That run, that stop was impressive. Very impressive.
Big difference between SEC football and like camp when you're doing one-on-ones. But one of the things they loved about him in camp, they had him go line up at corner and cover a slot receiver, and he beat him.
And I'll tell you, that's the thing with him is he's a guy that could grow into, from a coverage standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, grow into that nickel spot.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I agree with you there completely. So, Arkansas, they're going to use a lot of eye candy before the snap. They're very Kendall Briles to me is a very interesting offensive coordinator. I like him a lot because he's kind of like his dad. I mean, okay, if our personnel requires power run game, we'll do that all day. If our personnel could spread it 5 or wide, throw it all over the yard, we're going to do that. I mean, it's versatile. And I think we've seen the Briles offense in 3 different forms at Ole Miss, at Tennessee, and at Arkansas. I think people are learning this thing. That could be successful in the SEC. It was a Big 12 offense for a long time. A lot of people had questions. I always kind of looked out there and I thought, well, everybody kind of loves Mike Leach, and who doesn't? And his offense is doing fine in the league. But I thought, ideally, for an SEC football team that's going to have to run the ball or that may not have the quarterback that can throw, the Briles system's good. So he's going to test the eye discipline, I think, of South Carolina's defense. And then Arkansas, I guess I got lost. This got lost on me. Their tackle is 6'9", 311.
Large man.
That is a large man. That's a Justin Sorensen plus right there, man. The Canadian lumberjack shout out.
That's it.
They're big up front, and I think when you start talking about discipline and stuff like that, that's a secondary linebacker thing. And then you look at the defensive line versus their offensive line. Look, you got 2 4-stars and 2 5-stars starting up there for the Gamecocks. Mm-hmm. It's time. This is why you recruit these guys, so they can go against the offensive line like this. I think that, assignment football is going to be important. I want you to speak to that. And also, it's time for South Carolina's D-line to at least compete and maybe bat 500 against these guys because, Arkansas has one of the best offensive lines in the country. But, heck, that's why you go get Jordan Burch and Zach Pickens and Boogie Huntley as recruits and Jordan Strawn out of the portal and all those other guys. I mean, they're supposed to be good, and they're all kind of veterans by now.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like I've said before, you win and lose football games in the SEC in the trenches. Mm-hmm. And you go back to when we had beaten Clemson 5 years in a row. Clemson had a dang good team. They had that their skill positions were littered all over the NFL, mm-hmm. every single one of them, years worth of them. But we beat them up front and we beat them in the trenches. We may not have had the better athletes, overall, but we were a whole heck of a lot better in the trenches. And that's where we won those football games, when you're able to get pressure on the quarterback and you're able to block to establish a run game. And I think that's, like you said, with a lot of the motions and the movements, it's all about communication. Those guys got to be talking, they got to be communicating, they got to know what you're supposed to do based on different formations and where these guys shift to. So that's an important piece is really, good. Keep your eyes where they're supposed to be. Don't get caught up in all of that stuff. Know your assignment and do your assignment. I think that's what helps that with all that pre-snap movement, communications. But, a lot of with what Arkansas does, it starts with the quarterback, and the quarterback runs a lot. And, he's a good athlete, but they utilize him in all areas of the game. And so I think, really having those guys on the edge with Strawn and Jordan Burch, really setting the edge and not over pursuing and allowing KJ Jefferson to get, to get to the edge. Because once he gets to the edge, you can get big chunk plays. And that's what we need to try to eliminate is the big chunk plays. Maintaining your run gaps, not over pursuing. And that's what the defensive line has to be really good at is being able to collapse the pocket from the inside and really get good push. Because once you can collapse the pocket, forces the quarterback one way or another. And so with Burch and Strawn really setting the edge and maintaining that edge discipline, it allows for them to come in for the sacks, tackles for loss. So that defensive line, those front 4 are going to be critical, to the success that we have on Saturday. And the depth, with all the guys rotating in, it's going to be a team effort, but we got to be really good with setting the edge, and we got to be able to collapse the pocket from the interior to be able to have a chance to be successful, and really just keeping KJ Jefferson kind of in front of you. Don't let him outflank you. Don't let him get out wide. There's going to be times where the pocket breaks down and he slides up and tries to go for a chunk run, 20, 30 plays, and that's where those linebackers come into play. really maintaining that discipline, knowing where you're supposed to be, and really break down and fundamental, tackling fundamentally. Don't none of that arm tackling stuff and diving into legs, because he's a guy that you got to wrap up on, or if
you can't arm tackle him.
Yeah, or he's going to drag you down the field.
Yeah,
it's a lot of what I like to call miscellaneous yards, and you talk to him. You talked about him getting outside the pocket. And Arkansas is really good at working the sidelines. By the way, they'll throw that little pass out to Trey Knox. They'll do the receivers. But if KJ gets to the edge and he's got you outflanked, and you come up and hit him, your corners, right? Because your corners are probably giving up about 60 pounds in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
He will move forward for about 2 or 3 more yards. So whereas a normal quarterback would probably gain 4 or 5, he's getting 8. And if that's on first down, all of a sudden you're giving Kendall Brown 2nd and 3rd and 2. And it's over. I mean, it's over in that situation. So, I see exactly that. You got to get him on the ground. You got to contain Raheem Sanders. There's a lot to stop with Arkansas, I think. And their receivers have talent too. I mean, they're all bigger guys that can beat you. So, all right, switching back to offense real quick, and then we'll run. South Carolina, I think it's vitally important they do not let Arkansas get pressure with 3 or 4 tomorrow. Yeah. Mariota wants to do that all day because then he can drop everybody, and then Rattler's not going to have a whole. I mean, there's going to be flooded passing lanes.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, first down, especially, first down is probably one of the most critical downs for this offense on Saturday, and being able to keep kind of Barry Odom at bay where he can't get creative. Barry Odom is a very, very good defensive football coach, very creative, knows how to create pressure in different ways. So not giving him that flexibility to get creative, because we didn't do a good job this past Saturday of handling the different blitzes. And you give Barry Odom that opportunity, it could make for a long day. I think, being able to be successful on first down, get into those 2nd and short, 3rd and short situations where we can keep the playbook open. I think utilizing the screen game, the draw game is huge for us. And I know we haven't done that a whole lot. Even last year we didn't do it a lot, but I think that running screens, running draws is critical. That can help kind of neutralize blitzes. Calling plays that get the ball out of Spencer's hand a little bit quicker. I think Rattler did a good job of being patient. I think he kind of was a little bit quick getting out of the pocket at times, and I think some of that pressure, really kind of forced those decisions on him, with us not being able to protect him well early. I think tempo is another thing. You go back to that first drive of the game on Saturday, we ran tempo, had some success. We were getting guys that we were getting up and down the field, and after 3 or 4 plays, we just stopped, and it was like we just went to huddling. And so I think we need to be consistent with what we do. It's tough to go tempo, and then slow it down, and then try to get back to it. I think we need to be more consistent. If we're going to go tempo, I think we need to stick with it. There's going to be times where we may not have success and we may get pinned back, but I think we need to stick with it. I thought we did a good job of that, and guys were flying around, and it puts a little bit of pressure on the defense to get back up there and go. And but I think tempo is another thing. I don't want to see us try to force the ball to Jaheim Bell as much. I felt like on Saturday it was forced. I think we need to utilize him as part of the game plan and really make Arkansas plan for him, but use him at times as a decoy. There was times when we saw him in the backfield, it was like we tried to get him the ball, and maybe this week kind of utilize that as play action and get him out the backfield, or utilize him in the screen game in different ways, but don't force it to him. And I think if we can get Marshawn Lloyd going a little bit earlier in this game, I think people are going to see just how special he really is and how much speed and quickness he has. Because there was some times on last Saturday, when he gets into that open field, that he can really move, and he's got some speed and he's got elusiveness and quickness that I think the fans have been wanting to see. But I think the critical thing on Saturday is really having success on first down, being able to get into 2nd and medium, 2nd and short situations is going to be big for us. Because once we start getting into 2nd and long, 3rd and long, obvious passing situations, and Barry Odom's able to get pressure, they can get creative, and I think it can make for a long afternoon.
Michael Flint, ladies and gentlemen, joins us. Been joining us on Fridays every week here. You can check out all of his interviews with us on the YouTube page if you missed it. It's under the title "Wando's World." Use some alliteration there. Wando's World. Yeah, it's always good stuff, Michael. I really appreciate you. And so you got a score prediction for tomorrow?
I think, it's tough. There's a lot of factors at play here. I think Georgia State is a better football team than what we gave them credit for. Defensively, they were very disciplined. I think if it weren't for special teams, that game is a whole heck of a lot closer in the fourth quarter than people anticipate. And I really think Georgia State's going to give North Carolina all they can handle this weekend. And I think at the end of the year, really going to see how good of a football team they are, how well coached they are as well. And I think South Carolina has a good chance here. I think if we get back to doing like we said, perimeter blocking, fundamentals, I think, Coach Satterfield can get a game plan, but it's being able to put these guys in positions to be successful. And when you have a scheme, you got to make sure you got the guys that can play within the scheme. Everything sounds great in theory, but can you execute? And I think that's what we learned a lot about on Saturday is execution and what we're good at, what we're good at executing and what we may not be as good at with executing, and seeing how we adjust from last Saturday to this Saturday. But I really think we got the talent. We got the skill guys that can compete with just about any school in the SEC. And I like this team. I like the leadership qualities that they have. I think South Carolina has a very legitimate shot at winning this game. May not be potentially a high scoring game, but I think South Carolina wins this game. And I think it's, 27. I'm going to say Gamecocks 27-24.
Michael Flint, 27-24 Gamecocks. All right, man. Well, hey, we'll catch up pretty soon, probably next week, next Friday, and talk about those Georgia Bulldogs coming to town. Wow. And I say wow because I sometimes I thought Oregon looked terrible this past week. It didn't look like Oregon, but Georgia fans get on me. My Georgia buddies get on me for that. They're like, "You're not giving us any credit." Oof.
Hey, that's kind of like what I said last week. It's everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the mouth, and I think Georgia, they came out and man, it was impressive. Yeah. And I tell you, offensively they made it look easy, but it was easy to see how they tried to set things up. They really utilized certain plays to set up the next play or set up 2 or 3 plays away or the next series, and you could see Oregon's defenders at times look confused and didn't know what was going on, and that's a lot about what being an offensive coordinator is about. And like I say, putting guys in positions to be successful. That's really it. Georgia did a heck of a job doing that. Yeah. And so, Georgia looked good, but I think Oregon got a welcome to big boy football moment.
Yeah. I thought Monken sold me last year, Georgia's OC, in the championship game when Alabama clearly had like a liability at corner. He spotted it. And he went right after him, and that was that long touchdown pass from Bennett to I think Burton or Smith won. Yeah, and they changed the game, got him back on top, all that good stuff. Mike, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you soon, bud.
Hey, enjoyed it, guys. Have a good one. Go Cox.